Hello so buddies, you're welcome back again to this YouTube channel. It's Whitney Highwire here, and if you're new here, you're highly welcome. Please do well to hit on the subscribe button and also click on the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. In this video, we are going to be making this beautiful trending gown. Yeah, it's a very beautiful dress. So if this is something you're interested in, then do well and keep watching, and don't forget to make one for your baby girl. Yeah, so let's dive right in. Here are some of the items that were used during the course of making this dress. I made use of the Ankara fabric, but from the inspirations, the fabric majorly used are the scuba materials or the Mikado materials. Yes, so if you want the exact same replica of this dress, then you will have to get the scuba material or the Mikado material. The scuba or Mikado material gives this type of dress a more standing effect around the flare. But for me, I'll be making use of the Ankara fabric instead, and I have about 2.5 yards here for the Ankara fabric. Also, I'll be making use of the lining, and I'll also be making use of the stays. So this is my lining, and I have about 1.5 yards here, and I'll also be making use of the stay, which is this white fabric beside the lining. Yeah, and these two are optional, that is the lining and the stay. I need them because I'm making use of the Ankara fabric for making this dress. I hope you understand. So that is it. And also I'll be making use of the zip. You also need a zip for this dress, and of course your thread and sewing machine. So with that being said, let's dive right into the drafting. So for the drafting, I'll be drafting directly on the fabric. So because of that, you need to fold your fabric into two and make sure that the wrong side of your fabric is facing you. So right now the wrong side of my fabric is facing me because I'm going to be chalking directly on this fabric, and I don't need the right side of the fabric to be rough. So from the beginning of the fabric, I'm going to come down by 1 inch like this. I'll come down by 1 inch, and I'm going to bring in my rule to connect the dots to get a straight line. Now this line is going to serve as the starting line, or it represents the top line. Now on this line, I'll go ahead and divide the shoulder measurement by 2 and mark it out. So the shoulder measurement I'm working with divided by 2 gives me 4.5, and that is what I'll go ahead and mark out here on this line like this. Moving on, it's time to mark out the armhole depth. So for a 3-year-old, the armhole depth is 4.25 inch, or you can go ahead and divide the round chest measurement or round bust measurement by 6 plus 1.5 to get the armhole depth. So yeah, I'm just marking out the shoulder measurement on the armhole depth point so that I'll get a straight line when connecting the armhole depth to the shoulder like this. I hope you understand. Now it's time to mark out the neckline, and the basic neckline measurements for toddlers are 1.75 inch or 2 inch by 2 inch. So meaning the neck width, you can either make use of 1.75 or you can make use of 2 inches for the neck width. So for me, I'll be making use of 2 inches as the neck width like this. I'll mark out 2 inches. Then for the neck depth, I'll also be marking out 2 inches for the neck depth. So this is what I'm doing, and this is for the front neckline. And I'll go ahead and connect the neck width to the neck depth to get the regular basic round neckline. Moving on, it's time to mark out the shoulder slope. Now for toddlers, you just have to come down by 1/2 inch from the shoulder here. You come down by 1/2 inch from the shoulder here, and then you connect it straight to the neck width to get the shoulder slant or shoulder slope for toddlers and babies. Moving on, it's time to mark out the chest line, and to do that you have to divide the round chest or round bust measurement by 4. And for 3 years old, the round chest measurement is 22 inches divided by 4 gives me 5.5, and that is what I've marked out here. And I'll go ahead and bring in my rule to connect this straight down like this, and this line is the chest line. Next step is to go ahead and draw the armhole curve, and to get the armhole curve, I will go ahead and get the midpoint from the shoulder slope to the chest line by placing my tape like this, and whatever I get, I either divide it by 2 or I fold over my tape like this and get the midpoint like this. Now from the midpoint, I will come in by 1/2 inch like this, and I'll go ahead and connect the shoulder slope to the 1/2 inch to the chest line like this to give me the armhole curve. So you can either use your curve rule or you can just use your ends to connect the dots to get a curve, the armhole curve. So this is what I have. Next is to mark out the waistline. Now for 3 years old, the waistline ranges from 8.5 inches to 9 inches. That is from the shoulder to waist. So for me, I'll be making use of 9 inches. I'll be marking out 9 inches. Now, if you wish to have the body measurement for other age range for children, I'll get to drop it. I think I have from 0 to 7 years. So I'll be dropping it on either the community post or shorts, and I'll drop the link on the comment section. So after marking out the waistline, next step is to divide the round waist measurement by 4 and mark it out. And for 3 years old, the round waist measurement is 21. Divided by 4 gives me 5.25. And that is what I'll go ahead and mark out on the waistline here, 5.25. And I will connect the waistline to the chest measurements like this. So at this point, my pattern is completed. My front pattern is completed precisely. So this is the front pattern, and it is time to start adding allowance to this pattern. So in adding allowance, I'll be adding half an inch allowance to the neckline, half an inch allowance to the shoulder like this. I'll also be adding half an inch allowance to the armhole. So half an inch allowance to the shoulder like this. To the armhole, I'll be adding half an inch allowance like this. And on the side seam, I'll be adding 1 inch allowance. Take note of that, 1 inch allowance for the side seam. And also at the hem here, I'll be adding half an inch allowance to be able to attach these upper bodies to the flare. So I'll go ahead and cut this out, and this is the front pattern. So remember, for this front neckline, it has this type of shape that you're seeing on the picture here. So for that shape, I will come in from the center front by half an inch like this, and I'll come down by 1.5 inch or 2 inches. So you can either come down by 1.5 inch or 2 inches, and I'll go ahead and curve like this. Are you seeing it? So I'll curve from the neckline to the half an inch I came in with, and down to the 1.5 inches mark or 2 inches mark. Are you seeing it? So it's going to give me this shape that you're seeing at the center of this inspiration. But firstly, I'll go ahead and slit this center front and stop at the 1.5 inch mark like this. Are you seeing it? So it's when I'm sewing, that's when I'm going to follow this mark out neckline, that is achieve the neckline design. I hope you understand. So right now it's time to cut out the back pattern, and to do that, I'm going to bring in the folded fabric, and in folding it, I'm going to extend it further by 1 inch, because the back pattern has a zip at the back. This dress has a zip at the back, so we need to create allowance for that zip, and the allowance for the zip is 1 inch. So from the center back here, I'm going to be marking out 1 inch like this. Are you seeing it? So I'll just be marking 1 inch from the center back. Like I earlier stated, the back of this dress has a zip, and you need to create space for that zip where that zip can be sewn to. So that's why I'm coming in by 1 inch from the center back, and I'll go ahead and bring in my rule to connect this dot to get a straight line like this. And I'll keep going in by 1 inch till I think I have enough of this long line, this straight line. So I'll just go ahead and connect to get a straight line like this. And this is it. So next, I'll bring in the front pattern, and I'm going to place it on this line like this. So are you seeing it? So I'll place it on this line. Make sure that the center front is seated on the straight line that I've marked out, and I'll use my pin to hold it in place to the back fabric. I'll use my pin to hold the front pattern in place like this. Moving on, it's time to mark out the back neck depth. Yes, the back neck depth is different from the front neck depth, and the standard back neck depth for all individuals, both adults and children, is 1 inch. So I'll go ahead and mark out 1 inch from the top line, that is from the starting line. I will come down by 1 inch like this on the back pattern. Now that this is done, the next step is to go ahead and connect the neck width to the neck depth. So obviously the neck width is 2 inches. Yes, the back neck width and the front neck width always has to be the same. So I'll go ahead and use my ends to connect the neck width to the back neck depth, and this is the back neckline. And I'll also be adding half an inch allowance to the back neckline like this. If at any point you got confused, just let me know in the comment section, and I'll try my best to explain to you. After doing this, the next step is to go ahead and cut out the back pattern. I'll cut out the neckline, cut out the shoulder, cut out the armhole, the side seam, and also the hem, and I will open up the center back. To give me a more relaxed center back, I just go in on the waist by half an inch here from the center back, and I connect this back to the neckline like this, and I'll just go ahead and cut this out, although this is optional, but I just love doing this. And here I will indicate the back pattern on the back fabric. So right now it's time to do a little bit of calculations for the flare. And firstly, I'm just going to draw out the dress we're making so that we can understand every step clearly. So this is the neckline, right? This is the neckline, this is the shoulder, this is the armhole of the dress, and this is the waistline of the dress. And also this is the first layer of this dress. You know, this dress has 2 layers for the flare, so this is the second layer for the flare part of this dress. Now, from the shoulder to where the dress is going to stop is referred to as the full gown length. That is how long you want the dress to be. It's up for you to decide. So it is referred to as the full gown length. And for me, for this dress, I want this dress to be 26 inches long, right? So 26 inches long. Now, remember, for the half bodies that I drafted earlier on for the 3 years old, for a 3 years old, from the shoulder to the waist was 9 inches, right? So shoulder to waist was 9 inches for a 3 years old. And to know how long the flare is going to be, that is from the waist to where the dress stops, that is where the flare ends, I will have to subtract the shoulder to waist measurement from the full gown length. So full gown length minus shoulder to waist, and my full gown length is 26 inches minus shoulder to waist, which is 9 inches for me, gives me 17 inches. So meaning from the waist down to where the flare ends is 17 inches, meaning the flare is 17 inches long. In other words, if I'm to add the 17 inches to the 9 inches, it's going to give me the full gown length measurement, which is 26 inches. So moving on, you can see that the flare is in 2 layers. You can see that there's a joining on this part of the flare here. So meaning this flare is divided into 2 layers. And now to get the length for each layer, you will have to divide the 17 inches by 2. And 17 divided by 2 gives me 8.5 inches. 8.5 inches. So meaning this first layer is 8.5 inches long. And also this second layer is also 8.5 inches long. Are you saying it? So 8.5 plus 8.5 gives me 17 inches, which is the full length of the flare. And from the inspiration, you can see that the pleated parts of these flares are all pleated out. So we'll be leaving allowance for that. And for the allowance, you can either leave 3 inches or 4 inches. But for me, I'll be leaving 4 inches. Now, at the hem here of this first layer of the flare, we'll be leaving half an inch allowance, which is 0.5 inch allowance. And if I add this to this 4 inch allowance, I'm going to get 4.5 inch allowance, right? Now, to get the total length of the first layer, I will have to add 8.5 inch plus 4.5 inch allowance. I hope you understand. So 8.5 plus 4.5 inch, which is for the allowance, gives me 13 inches. Meaning when I'm cutting out the length for this first layer, it's going to be 13 inches long. That is for the length. Now, to get the length for the second layer, also remember that the pleatings are also pleated outwards. So I'll also be leaving 4 inches for the pleating allowance. So I'm just going to first of all indicate everything that has to do with the first layer. So this is the first layer calculation, and this other side is for the second layer calculation. So this is the first layer and this is the second layer, right? So for the second layer, I'm going to add 8.5 plus the 4 inch allowance gives me 12.5, right? Now at the hem, to turn the hem of this second layer, which is the ending of the flare, we're going to be adding 2 inches for turning the hem. Right, because you need to make sure that the hem of the flare is neat. You have to turn the hem, so you'll be adding 2 inches for that, right? So 2 inches here at the hem for hemming allowance. So I'll be adding 2 inches to this second layer calculation. So since 8.5 plus the 4 inch for pleating allowance gave me 12.5, so meaning 12.5 plus the 2 inch for the hemming allowance is going to give me 14.5. So meaning This second layer is going to be 14.5 inches long. So the first layer is already 13 inches long, and the second layer is going to be 14.5 inches long. That is the length for the second layer. So when I'm cutting out the second layer, it's going to be 14.5 inches long, and when I'm cutting out the first layer, it's going to be 13 inches long. I hope you do understand this little mathematics that we have just done. So I'll go right ahead and use these calculations to cut out the length of the flares. Now for cutting out the width, for determining the width, note that when it comes to gathers or pleating, you always have to have excess of that fabric. So for the first layer, I'll just go ahead and multiply the round waist measurement by 2 and add few inches to cut out the width. And for the second layer, the width has to obviously be bigger than the first layer, so I will just multiply the round waist measurements by 3 and also add few inches. So I have cut out the first layer and this is it. And for cutting out the width, remember I said you multiply your round waist measurements by 2, then add few inches. So the round waist measurement I am working with is 21 inches times 2 gives me 42 inches, right? And I added 10 extra inches to just make it 52 inches, and here I have 52 inches. So meaning 42 plus 10 gives me 52. So for the length, remember I calculated 13 inches for the first layer, and this is it, 13 inches for the length of the first layer. And it is because of this gatherings, this pleating, that's why you have to make sure that the width is in excess. Yes, your fabric has to be in excess when it comes to cutting out the width. So that is it for the first layer. Moving on, for the second layer, remember the length I calculated for the second layer was 14.5 inches, and that is what I have here, 14.5 inches for the length. And for the width, it has to be more than that of the first layer. So I multiplied the round waist measurement I'm working with by 3 and I added a few more inches to it. And as you can see, my fabric was not even enough. I had to cut out extra fabric that will be sewn to the width to make it more, wider. So the round waist measurement I'm working with is 21 times 3 gives me 63 inches, and I added about 16 more inches, making it 79 total. So I just make sure I add excess of the width. When it comes to the width, I just make sure I add excess. So this is the remaining fabrics left, and I have to cut out the fabric needed for the bow tie. It's time to cut that out. So for the bow tie, I am yet to determine how long and how big I want the bow tie to be. And for this particular dress, there is no specific type of bow tie used for it, so it's up to you to decide the type you want. There's the one you can get to just tie the big white stripes by yourself into a bow tie, while there is one that the bow tie has already been sewn and attached, so there's no need for tying and all of that. So it all depends on how you want your bow tie, the kind of bow tie style you want, and I'll post different pictures of bow tie styles there for you to decide. But just note that they have big size bow tie. So for this, I'm yet to decide, but I'm just trying to make sure that the width of this bow tie is 22 inches, although I am yet to decide how big I want it to be. But I just want to cut out the fabrics so that I can iron in stay on the wrong side of the fabric and keep it aside, set it aside till it gets to the time for sewing this bow tie or for putting this bow tie to the shoulder. So after marking out 22 inches, I'm just going to cut that up. And once I finally decide how big I want this bow tie to be, I will let you know once I have come to a conclusion. So this is me, sharing this fabric into 2 because it's going to be 2 bow tie, one on the right shoulder and the other on the left shoulder. So right now I'll go and iron the stay on the wrong side of each fabric. So for the length of this fabric here, it is 18 inches, and the width, like I measured earlier on, it was 21 inches, a bit 22 inches. So this is how it's going to be. So right now, just go and iron in stay on the wrong side, and after ironing the stay, I will stitch up this end, stitch up this side, stitch up to this end, leave a space for turning in this to the right side, and then I'll go ahead and flip it to the right side and iron. And also I'll be ironing stay on the wrong side of the front and the back pattern. I'll also be cutting lining for each as well. So this is the front pattern. I have ironed in an stay to the front pattern. As you can see, I've also cut out lining for the front pattern as well, exactly the same thing that I have for the fabric. So right now, I'll go ahead and place the lining on the right side of the front pattern fabric like this, and I'll use my pin to hold it down like this. So right now it's time to close up the neckline. Are you seeing it? So for the neckline, remember there is this shape at the neckline. So to achieve that shape, you have to come in by 1/2 inch from the center front like this on both sides. Then you go ahead and curve it down to the 1.5 inch mark that we came down with from the neckline, or to 2 inches, whichever you want to come down with. So for me, I made use of 1.5 inches. Are you seeing this? So it has this kind of neckline shape at the center front. So after drawing out the shape, you can see the way I just curved it. So it's not that difficult. It's something you can just do. Just outline it, just curve down to the center front to the deepness that you want for the center front neckline. And now I'm marking the 1/2 inch for sewing allowance for closing up the neckline. So I'll go ahead and also mark it on the other side, 1/2 inch for sewing allowance to close up the neckline. I'll mark it out and I'll connect to that beautiful shape at the neckline. So please just watch. And this is what I have. So I'm just trying to draw a curve here. So right now I'll go ahead and stitch on this line that I've drawn out. I'll go ahead and stitch on it. So once I run my stitch on it, I'll come back and show you. So after closing up the neckline for the front, the next step will also be to close up the necklines for the back patterns. And right here with me are my back patterns, which obviously I've ironed and estee on the wrong side of the back patterns. So I'll go ahead and also bring in the lining that I've also cut out for the back patterns, exactly the same thing as the fabric. And I'll go ahead and place each respectfully on the wrong side of the back patterns like this. And I'll use my pin to, hold it in place. I will also bring in lining for this other piece and place it as well on the right side like this, and use my pin to hold it in place as well. And I will go ahead and close up the necklines using 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Moving on, it's time to bring in the bow tie, which obviously I have ironed and estee to on the wrong side. And as you can see, I've stitched this ends and I left space here and I stitched this end. So this space here is to be able to turn this over to the right side. So I'll go ahead and first of all trim off the excesses like this. I'll trim it off. And after trimming off the excess, I'll go ahead and, turn this bow tie to the right side through this little portal, through this little opening. So after turning it over, this is what I should have. This is what I have rather, as you can see. So this is what it should look like. And to close up this opening here, I'll be needing the Amy gum. So I'm going to bring in my Amy gum and just cut a little bit out of it and place it in between the openings like this. And I'll go ahead and iron this out, and that opening will be sealed completely. Moving on, while making this dress, I decided to cut out little ropes for tie ropes. And here they're about 1.5 inch wide, that is on fold, and the length is about 18 inches. So I'm just going to put these, those ropes that are always at the side for tying at the back to make the dress more tighter. So I just decided to include this, although this is not in the inspiration of this dress. So this is the front pattern. I've closed up the necklines. As you can see, I even top stitched it to the lining just to give it a more neater look. So I'll bring in the back pattern, and I've also closed up the neckline as well. And in placing it on the front pattern, I'll make sure that the right side of the back pattern is facing the right side of the front pattern, because right now it's time to close up the shoulders. In closing up the shoulders, I'll go ahead and open the shoulder of the front pattern like this, and also bring in the shoulders of the back pattern like this, and make sure that the joinings are directly on each other. That way the lining will be on the same side and the fabric should also be on the same side. And I'll go ahead and close this up using 1/2 inch allowance like that. So I'll do the same thing on this other shoulder as well, and once I'm done, I'll bring it back in and show you. So this is what I have. I have closed up the shoulder, and you can see how beautiful this is looking. Now for the tie rope, I have placed one of the tie rope here, and I'm going to show you how I did this. So for the tie rope, this is the other part. I went up by 1.5 inch from the waistline, and after marking out the 1.5 inch, I brought in the tie rope and I placed it like this, making sure that the side that is closed up, that is the joining side on the tie rope, is facing me. And then I went ahead to use my pin to hold it in place, making sure that it's, starting from that 1.5 inch that I came up with from the waistline. I hope you understand. Then I'll go ahead and stitch this to only the fabric. I'll stitch the tie rope to only the fabric, so to secure it to the fabric. So this is what I have. I have stitched it down to the fabric. Please note that this tie rope is optional. It's not part of the original inspiration of this dress. So right now it's time to close up the side seam of this dress. Now, if you don't want to do an inseam stitch, you can just go ahead and just close up the side seam using 1 inch. But before closing up the side seam, make sure you close up the armholes. But for me, I want to do an inseam stitch, so I'll go ahead and first of all close up the fabrics like this using 1 inch seam allowance, which I left. And after closing up the fabrics, I'll also close up the lining side seam separately like this, using the same 1 inch side seam allowance to close it up. So this is what I have. I have closed up the side seam, and when this is flipped over to the wrong side like this, you won't be able to see the seam stitches. They are hidden, and that is why I love inseam stitches. All the stitches are hidden. You can't be able to see it on the wrong side. So right now it's time to close up the armholes, and to close up the armholes, I'll go ahead and bring the armhole in like this on the wrong side. And I'm going to, this is quite technical though, I'll place it like this, place the lining on the fabric like this around the armhole, making sure that the shoulders joining are on the same point like this. Please watch like this. The right side will be facing the right side. It's more of like the lining is kissing the fabric, and then I'll go ahead and stitch it round using an inch. There is also a much more easier method to closing up your armhole in case you find this method very tricky and difficult. And I've used the easier method several times, so I'll just drop the link to that easier method on the description box. So right now it's time to focus on the layers, and this is the first layer. And from the top of the first layer, I'm going to come down by 4 inches. That is that 4 inch allowance. I'll go ahead and mark it out like this on both sides. And after marking it out, next I'll go ahead and fold in 2 inches like this. So I hope you understand, meaning whatever allowance you leave for the pleating outside, you have to, divide it into 2. So if you left 3 inches allowance instead of 4, meaning you'll be folding in 1.5 inch. I hope you understand. So in doing this, I would need the aiming gum to secure this folding in place. Now I'll place in the aiming gum and iron, but if you don't have the aiming gum, you can just run a straight stitch at the end of the folding just to hold the folding in place, and you go ahead and iron. Next, I'll bring in the second layer, which I've labeled on the second layer so I don't get confused. And at the second layer, we also have to turn the hem as well. So I'll go ahead and come up by 2 inches, which is for the aiming allowance, and I'll mark this out. And if you don't have the aiming gum, you can just fold in 1 inch like this, fold it 1 inch again, and then run a stitch on it to turn the hem. But if you have the aiming gum, you can just go ahead and place the aiming gum like this and turn over 2 inches, but make sure you weave the edges of the hem before using your aiming gum. Now if you cannot weave the edges, just place your aiming gum and then fold in half an inch like that and iron as well. I will also be coming down by 4 inch from the top part of this second layer, and also repeat the same thing I did to the top part of the first layer. So right now, this is the first layer. In flipping it to the wrong side, you can see I have secured the folding with the aiming gum, using the aiming gum, and this is the right side. And I'll bring in the second layer. So this is the second layer, and you can see this is the hem. You can see that I weaved the edge. So this is the top part, which I've also folded the same way I did for the first layer. I hope you understand. So right now it's time to sew the second layer to the first layer, placing it on that half an inch allowance that was left at the hem of the first layer. But before doing that, I will have to get the midpoint of the first layer by folding it over into 2 and notching the midpoint. And then I also get the midpoint of the second layer by folding it over into two. But this time around, instead of notching, I will have to use my chalk to indicate the midpoint, because you don't want to cut out any part of the second layer at all. So after doing that, after indicating the midpoint, I will make sure that the midpoint of the second layer is on the midpoint of the first layer by using my pin to hold it in place. And I'm going to be stitching the second layer to the 1/2 inch allowance on the first layer. I hope you understand. And in stitching it, you see this 2 inches, remaining 2 inches at this upper part is going to be outside. Yes, I hope you understand. So you can go ahead and just mark out 2 inches so that you know, okay, where to run your stitch through. And then you go ahead and gather the fabrics like this, and you run your stitch on the 2 inches mark. I'll go ahead and do this while I bring in the upper bodice. So this is the upper bodice, and I have closed up the armholes and also ironed this out so you can see how beautiful this is looking. So right now, just go ahead and take measurements of the waist from this end to this end. So what I have here is 22 inches. So I'll just put this figure at the back of my mind, just in case I need it. Moving on, the next step is to get the midpoint of the waistline of this upper bodice by folding it over into two like this. So I'll fold the fabric part into two like this. And I'll bring in my scissors to give this center a little cut, which is the notch. So I'm just going to trim off these excess threads. So next, I'll bring in the layers that I've joined together. So as you can see, this is what I have. I have joined the second layer to the first layer. You can see these gathers here, how beautiful it is looking. And if you're not making use of a lining, make sure you weave the edges of your seams. Yeah, so it looks way neater. So next, I'll also get the midpoint of this first layer, of this upper part of the first layer. I'll fold it over into two like this, and I will bring in my chalk to indicate the midpoint, because obviously you don't want to cut this part at all. So after using my chalk to indicate the midpoint, I'll go ahead and place this midpoint of the first layer on the midpoint of the upper bodice, that's the waistline here. So I'll use my pin to hold it in place. I'll place the midpoints like this on this notch here on the waistline. So I'll just use my pin to hold it in place, and I'll be stitching this first layer on the 1/2 inch allowance that I also left out at the hem of this upper bodice. Now you can either decide to pleat or gather this first layer on the waistline here. And from the dress inspirations, some are gathered at the waist, while some bust pleatings are done at the waist. So it all depends on the kind of look you're going for. Go ahead and go for it. And don't forget to leave 2 inches at the top outside while pleating. So I'll go ahead and do this and come back and show you. So buddies, this is what I have. I have sewn in the layers to the waist, and I did the bust pleatings. Moving on, the next step is to sew in the zip. And in sewing in the zip, I'll go ahead and place the teeth of the zip on the right side of the fabric, and make sure that the zip is seated on the 1 inch zipper allowance, which is going to be marked from the center back. And then I'll bring in the lining like this, and place it like this, and go ahead and stitch down the zip using the 1 inch zipper allowance. I hope you do understand. And after I've done this on this side, on the other side, I'll also go ahead and repeat the same thing. And then I'll go ahead and weave the edges of the lining and the waist seam allowance together to give it a neater look. If you still want to sew in a flare lining for your lining parts, no problem, you can go ahead and do that. I've done that on several of my videos. I will drop the link to those videos so you can go ahead and see how to go about that. These are the bow ties, which of course I've tacked together at the midpoint using the needle and thread. And for the dress, when you open it up to the wrong side, you can see how neat this is looking. So that is it. For me, I decided to later sew in a flare lining to this dress. If you don't know how to do that, I'll drop the link to doing that on the description box. So these are the tie ropes, and this is how it's going to be tied at the back, although these are optional. So next, in attaching the bow tie, for this particular type of bow tie, I'll be needing this strip of fabric. And for the bow tie, the length I later concluded on is 10 inches long, and for the width it was 7.5 inches wide. That is how big this bow tie was. Now for this rope, it is 1.5 inches wide while on fold, and I went ahead to close up the side seam of this rope. So it is this rope I'll be using to place to hold this bow tie to the shoulder. Now, like I earlier stated, there are different ways of different types of bow ties. So you can, some of them you just need the needle and thread to tack it to the shoulder, but for this particular type you need this rope to hold it in place, and then use your needle and thread to tack the rope to the shoulder and hold it in place. So guys, this is it. So initially I decided to put bow ties on both shoulders, but I decided to also try bow tie on one shoulder. So which one do you love the most? And also, if you enjoyed this video and if you found this video helpful and you're yet to hit on that subscribe button, what are you waiting for? Hit on that subscribe button, and also do not forget to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to share this video as well. So see you in my next video. Bye. Bye.